The new Interview Pro microphone from Rode has caused a lot of interest and controversy for many reasons. Of course, the Interview Pro is much more than a microphone and even more than a wireless microphone. It's also a standalone 32-bit float audio recorder to use with or without a wireless receiver, so its potential applications extend even further, especially if we are willing to drop some old habits or rules, which I'll cover later, in addition to explaining why I'm not wearing headphones right now. First, let's talk about the unreasonable criticisms that the Interview Pro has received and debunk them for most ENG or electronic news gathering situations. Later, we'll talk about other applications, pros and cons, given the Interview Pro's extraordinary quality and simplicity. Criticism number 1. The Interview Pro has an omnidirectional capsule, not a cardioid or other directional pattern. For all those people who have made this unreasonable criticism, I must point out that most popular ENG microphones I have ever seen used in news television have had an omnidirectional capsule. These began with the Electro Voice 635A, which was released in 1965, and its variants, followed by the Electro Voice RE50 and its variants. Since I began publishing in Pro Video Coalition magazine in 2008, I have reviewed and compared several ENG microphones, including, in alphabetical order, the Audio-Technica BP4002, the Rode Reporter, and the Senal ENG-18RL, which derived its name from the Castilian word señal, which translates to English as signal. In some cases, I made direct comparisons with the Electro Voice RE50. All of these have an omnidirectional pickup pattern. There are many reasons why the electronic news gathering field has generally preferred the omnidirectional pickup pattern for many decades. Omnidirectional mics are much more forgiving when one of the two people in an interview unexpectedly interrupt one another, and unlike directional microphones, there is no proximity effect with omnidirectional mics. As a result, even though one of the voices might get further away from the microphone, the tone doesn't change, so only dynamic compression is required, without any need for continuous equalization over time as the microphone is moved back and forth, as often happens.
Hoy tenemos un clima espectacular, soleado.
Pero en realidad no hay casi diferencia si yo apunto allí o no. Cambia un poco el nivel, pero no cambia la ecualización porque es omnidireccional.
Criticism number 2. It's a condenser microphone, not a dynamic microphone. This one is borderline reasonable and borderline unreasonable. Although historically, most popular ENG stick microphones used for impromptu interviews and stand-ups have been dynamic, not condenser, including all the examples I covered in the prior section, all shotguns and 99% of all lavalier microphones have been condenser-type microphones during the same time period. It is probably not a good idea to use the Rode Interview Pro microphone as a substitute for a hammer, as some dynamic mics have been used. However, given all the amazing features including in the Interview Pro, we must give it a chance, especially since we are now in the era of instant noise reduction in post, or even live noise reduction with some mics and workflows to be covered soon. And we can and should treat our mics as gently as we treat our cameras and audio mixers. Could the Interview Pro be used as a studio mic? Surprisingly, the answer is yes, but I would only consider it if it's going to be a single microphone in the same room or studio, and it is very close to the sound source. In fact, you've been hearing it during this whole video, with only moderate processing applied in post. That's mainly to reduce the room noise and reflections, not any noise created within the Interview Pro that I can hear. What about latency while monitoring? As I stated in my article, Rodecaster Latency-Free Headphone Monitoring, Yes, No, and Yes, from January 2024, it depends upon your own threshold. For example, the original Rodecaster Pro has 3 milliseconds, which is too low to be perceived, even by me. The Rodecaster Pro 2 and Duo have 6 milliseconds of delay, which is tolerable or unnoticed by many, but too annoying for me, which is why I don't usually use these. And the newer Mackie DLZ and DLZ XS have 5 milliseconds. In case you didn't know, Mackie was recently purchased by RØDE. In the case of the RØDE Interview PRO microphone we're covering today, I have the following to say. 1. The compatible receivers indeed work with the RØDE Connect software. 2. The Connect software mixer does allow the Interview PRO to appear as a source via one of those compatible receivers. 3. The latency is too much for me since I'm so sensitive, but would probably be fine for those who don't mind the latency in the RØDECaster Pro 2 and the Duo. So what's the bottom line? The bottom line depends on how sensitive to latency you are. If you are as sensitive as I am, you can deactivate the Listen button for that source after doing the initial check and simply monitor the other sources if there are any. Since there aren't any other active sources in this video I'm recording about the Interview Pro, I'm not wearing headphones at all, although I use them during the setup. I'm not going to wear them just for show. What does this mean if you're going to use the Interview Pro for an audio-only in-person interview that's pre-recorded without any wireless receiver? Considering that the Interview Pro has no headphone output, it means that we must trust the record button's red light as our only confidence indicator, together with the fact that the only recording in the Interview Pro is exclusively 48 kHz, thank you RØDE, and 32-bit float with a true 1528 dB dynamic range. There is no way to record a human voice with an incorrect level inside of the Interview Pro recorder. Of course, you could have a compatible wireless receiver and a third person acting as an audio engineer who can monitor the whole thing, since the latency won't bother anyone who isn't speaking on the recording, but that would no longer be a single-member audio crew as journalist and recordist. Please read the associated article in provideocoalition.com for the rest of the story. Este video y artículo también existen en castellano en alantepper.soy.